When you think of the enemies of Daredevil, there are maybe like several that come to mind. If you're not familiar, you might just say the Kingpin or maybe Bullseye. And if you are a fan of Daredevil, you might go a bit deeper, like the Hand or the Owl even. But by far, one of Daredevil's most obscure villains has to be one man, the masked marauder. Now, many of Daredevil's most intimidating foes can vary in their incredible abilities. Typhoid Mary and her pyrokinetics, Muse and his ability to be nigh undetectable by manipulating people's senses, or even something like Kingpin's inhuman strength. All of these guys challenge Daredevil in many ways. So what does Masked Marauder have that could possibly challenge the Crimson Crusader? Well, he has some goggles that can make people blind. Okay, today we're going to be talking about a villain I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and I've been working on compiling like all of his appearances into one cohesive like story. I feel like he's a very underrepresented, or not even like talked about, villain of Daredevil's. So let's get into it. And I promise this will get interesting. But it's funny how most of Daredevil's most iconic villains that recur in his series first debuted much later in his career, except for maybe like the Owl. Most of his earliest foes were either one-offs or die within their first appearance. Masked Marauder, however, belongs to an awkward middle ground where he appeared as early as issue number 16 in the 1960s and stuck around to plague Daredevil as well as many other heroes for roughly 10 years until 1976. He even got some minor appearances in the early 2000s, but we'll touch on those later. I find his story to be an interesting one because I believe Masked Marauder is the first Daredevil villain to pose a serious, impactful threat to Daredevil and his personal life altogether. In fact, Masked Marauder was one of the first characters to come the closest to learning Daredevil's secret identity. Before Karen, before Kingpin, before Foggy. They even say so in one of their pinups. So that is why today, I felt the need to express why we need to go over Masked Marauder's story in order to recognize him as a severely underrated Daredevil villain, and why we, and Marvel, need to talk about him more. Let's start at the beginning, where the Masked Marauder is actually introduced to fighting and continually escaping Spider-Man of all people. While this is not the first time Spider-Man and Daredevil cross paths, I find it kind of impressive that Masked Marauder makes his debut fighting both Spider-Man and Daredevil. Like, he's a team-up villain. He's got that pizzazz, you know what I mean? We first meet the Marauder and his men attempting to steal a fancy new motor engine thing from the World's Motors building. I looked it up. I don't think this is a real place, and so I don't know what the purpose of this thing is, but we're just gonna look past that for now. They, however, get intercepted by Spider-Man, and as Karen and Foggy explain it, this is not the first time, since Spider-Man has been on their trail for a while. Shortly, we cut to Marauder himself devising his genius plan to hinder Spider-Man from getting in his way, which is, of course, dressing up all of his men as Daredevil and rage-baiting Spider-Man so that the two fight each other. Only a genius like myself could have devised so foolproof, so imaginative a scheme. Yeah, that's for sure, because I certainly wouldn't have thought of it. What I'm not sure of is what his beef is with Daredevil, or where it came from. But this is a crazy obsession to develop for an introduction. I mean, who made all these costumes? Him? We also get to see his main gimmick when one of his henchmen defies him, and Masked Marauder uses his Opti Blast to temporarily blind him. It's got a cool name. I like that. So Masked Marauder's plan goes into action, and sure enough, the henchman fools Spider-Man, and when the real Daredevil inevitably makes it onto the scene, the two indulge in what becomes probably the pettiest squabbles Daredevil has ever been involved in yet. Once again showing his ineptitude at the art of negotiation, as we saw with Namor not so long ago. With the two heroes duking it out rather publicly, everyone is distracted enough for Masked Marauder to enact his real plan of stealing that motor. I'll possess the plans for the newest, most powerful auto engine ever devised. Plans which I'll then alter for my own purposes. These purposes, we shall never know. We are blessed, however, with another display of Masked Marauder's genius, because his brilliant plan for breaking into the building is a giant truck with a tube, and a tube that propels his men almost instantly using air pressure. And honestly, it kind of looks like a fun ride. And as if his helmet and truck tube weren't proof that this guy is good with his hands, he also invented some handgun laser thing capable of opening a vault door in 30 seconds flat. So what is he doing here, man? He's a genius. All goes exactly as planned thanks to his tools and his precise timetable. Can't forget the timetable. And before the guards have a chance to even ask, Masked Marauder blinds them while escaping in a sports car out of the back of the truck. You know, the tube truck. He had a sports car in the tube truck. Anyways, meanwhile, after Spider-Man and Daredevil have duked it out, news of the Masked Marauder's plan gets out, making each hero believe that the other is in cahoots with the villain. Spider-Man, upset by this loss, decides to go hunting, and by happenstance, his spider sense picks up a familiar sensation as he approaches the law office of Nelson and Murdock. By process of elimination, Spider-Man deduces that Foggy must be Daredevil, though he can't refrain from making several fat jokes along the way. Thanks, Spider-Man. Real friendly. While the accusation is ultimately in vain, afterwards Foggy notices how Karen seems to treat him differently after being accused of Daredevil, and rolls with it. Oh yeah, I should mention the whole love triangle thing they got going on. I'm sure people who have been watching my Daredevil videos know, but like if you're just coming on here, this has been a thing since issue 1. It gets crazy. And all of this will be shockingly important later, but let's keep going. After a heated scene, Daredevil decides he has to put an end to Masked Marauder's chaos by going to the building he robbed and getting some clues. After overhearing a meeting going on, Daredevil concocts a plan to deceive the Masked Marauder into thinking he didn't get everything he needed for that engine to work. Although technically the fuel they talk about isn't needed, Daredevil decides to use it anyways since no one else knows. So he sells the story to J. Jonah Jameson and get Masked Marauder to return to the scene of the crime for an ambush. Duly, Masked Marauder learns of the reports and quickly sets in motion plans to steal the fuel source. Without his special truck this time, but the tube truck. And while everyone thinks of how foolish it is to let the world know Masked Marauder needs another part, Daredevil prepares for the next attack.
At night.
But Daredevil isn't the only one anticipating the Marauder. Spider-Man also waits and intercepts Daredevil along the way, still thinking he's plotting with the Marauder. Once again, the two furiously fight on the rooftops, allowing Masked Marauder to make his move. This time, not with a truck, but a blimp. How did he get a blimp? Like, okay, it's one thing to have a truck with a tube, right? Like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief, but where did he get the blimp? Let's just keep going. We gotta keep going. By the time the guards check to see if it's actually the Marauder landing, they are blinded by his blasts once again, until Spider-Man comes along to thwart them at last. But this time, Marauder has the chance to blind him, leaving Daredevil the only one left to defeat him. Lo and behold, Daredevil is not affected by the blast. Just take a guess why. And shortly overcomes him in hand-to-hand combat, as well as blowing up his blimp with a gun. Sure hope nobody was still in there. Amidst the chaos, Masked Marauder once again slips through the cracks and overhears the conversation between Foggy and Karen, where Foggy is now pretending to be Daredevil to impress Karen. See, I told you it would be important. Leaving us with the cliffhanger where Masked Marauder thinks he now knows the identity of Daredevil. Now, this whole love triangle with Karen, Matt, and Foggy gets to a sitcom level of silly when Foggy, high off the fantasy of pretending to be Daredevil, actually goes to a costume shop to get himself fitted for a Daredevil costume. Unfortunately, Foggy commissions the antisocial Melvin Potter, who acquiesces to the task conveniently as he is just about ready to debut his villainy and gets a chance at taking on the real Daredevil. Melvin knows Foggy isn't Daredevil, as anyone can guess, but agrees to help Foggy with his plan and offers to perform as the villain, but is actually planning to kill him in order to lure out the real Daredevil. Well, you can imagine the shenanigans the gang gets into, and ultimately the real Daredevil does defeat the newly surfaced Gladiator, leaving him to think that Foggy really did take him down. So you're probably wondering, how the heck is this even relevant or remotely important? I mean, we can all agree it's entertaining, but how does this relate to Masked Marauder, the star of the show here? Well, we don't have to look far, as in the very next issue, Masked Marauder promptly breaks Gladiator out of his court hearing by having his men dress up as reporters and shoot tear gas from their cameras. Only the genius of Masked Marauder, am I right, guys? As the men take him back, Gladiator gets more and more agitated over the idea of serving another, which will prove to be an issue. Oh yes, and just so you know, the Gladiator in this era has like a huge ego. He's like a typical mustache twirling villain, you know, wants to take over the world, all that sort of stuff. Even as the Masked Marauder makes his dramatic entrance, Gladiator is quick to lash out. So, Marauder has to blind him in order to show off his power. He then explains that now he is using the manpower of some mobsters. Like, he used to have henchmen. I thought they were all cute with their little color coordination and everything. Now it's just some guys in suits. What happened to his henchmen? But this is all in order to create his very own crime corps. You know, typical criminal activities. Also, when Gladiator was taken in, he exposed Foggy as Daredevil's secret identity. So their plan is to abduct him for Masked Marauder to take out. While they go do that, Masked Marauder tries to coerce Gladiator to working for him, rather unsuccessfully. While the two fight and Masked Marauder kinda takes a beating, he does showcase the power of his steel cushioned helmet with a headbutt. So, you know, at least he's not completely defenseless without his Opti Blast. Anyways, as the two are fighting, the mobsters go to attack Foggy when the real Daredevil quickly comes to the rescue. Although most of the men are taken out, one mobster escapes to bring the news that Foggy is in fact not Daredevil to the main two villains. With that, their entire plan has gone to pieces and they have to start from scratch. Gladiator is reluctant to suggest they team up, but is impressed with Masked Marauder's resources and organization, as he is prepared for this, and in case their guy was followed. So the two run off to the next hideout for their next battle, which picks up after Daredevil goes to face off the Owl, which, trust me, is not worth getting into right now. It is a whole other adventure, which is why I'm not going to explain what Daredevil is doing landing a giant metal owl in the middle of a field in Long Island, but I will bring your attention to Foggy and Karen waiting on Matt's return as they bump into Mr. Farnham, their landlord, who actually made a little appearance after the Gladiator fights with Daredevil in issue 19. He is their landlord, who Foggy can't help but mention is so much nicer than the usual clientele Matt attracts to their office. Speaking of Matt, he somehow makes the commute all the way back to the city with just his billy club and acrobatics. And instead of being thirsty for any water after all that, he only stays thirsty for Karen. But let's get back to the real star of the show here, or should I say stars, since Masked Marauder and Gladiator are now officially colluding together. With the Magia, basically Marvel's Mafia stand-in, now leaderless, Masked Marauder is eager to take the position, and what other way to prove their legitimacy than killing Daredevil? So on top of everything else Masked Marauder has invented so far, he now unveils in the power plant they're using as a hideout that he has been working on making an android. An android? Oh, not just any android, the Tri-Android, because it will be powered by 3 separate humans. And you know, I think Gladiator puts it best here. Marauder, I used to think you were nuts. Now, I'm sure of it. Using his levitation ray, which he also has, by the way, he transports 3 different men, each specializing in strength, agility, and intelligence respectively. Oh yeah, Masked Marauder has lampposts that can teleport people. Sorry, I guess we just forgot to go over that. You know, now that I look at it, if Masked Marauder had these lampposts, why didn't he just use this for the World Motorscape? I don't know. Yeah, I think the guy just likes being creative. With the 3 men imprisoned in test tubes, one specializing in each specific skill, Masked Marauder pulls the lever and all 3 essences bring life to the android. With his trump card now ready, Masked Marauder calls up the Magia, who I guess he just has on speed dial, to inform them on how he will defeat Daredevil right in the middle of Madison Square Garden, where a boxing match is going on. How poetic. Of course, Foggy already has tickets to see a boxing match taking place in the garden and is already on his way, while Matt and Karen catch up on the work in the office. And just when it seems like they might catch up on some other things, Matt hears the report of the Tri-Man attacking the garden, asking for Daredevil. Being the genius he is, Matt decides the only excuse he can make for himself while Karen is around is to take the Daredevil outfit Foggy had made for him and go fight anyways. Like, who are you fooling here? Masked Marauder, being the perceptive man he is, thinks Matt looks just like Daredevil in his suit, and recognizes Karen Page as the secretary of Nelson and Murdoch actually, connecting the dots and immediately makes a play on it. And before anyone notices, Matt makes his way onto the stage while Karen remains oblivious. Somehow. While Daredevil pretty much dances on the android, making his debut rather anticlimactic, Masked Marauder sees Karen and Foggy in the crowd and uses them as hostages to get Daredevil to surrender, or at least to get him under another one of those lights he's using as a levitation beam. Genuinely, I have no idea how this works, so don't even ask. Now with the trap set, Masked Marauder throws the lever to ensnare Daredevil so that they can use his abilities to power the android instead. Though Daredevil is not trapped for long, as he uses his sensitive touch to find the weakest part of the glass and break free. In response, Marauder releases each of the men to face Daredevil with the simple promise of money to incentivize them. You know, sometimes it's just that easy.
That was easy.
Naturally, none of them fare well against him, leaving the Marauder and Gladiator all alone. As the Marauder lets the Gladiator fight it out with Daredevil, he gets in contact with the Magi once again, literally within feet of the fight going on, like didn't even get to a safe place. And the Magi are not impressed with the performance so far. Masked Marauder, however, is always quick with a plan and promises to deliver both Daredevil and Gladiator to them with his levitation ray. Poetically enough, he sends them both to a Coliseum movie set for them to fight in, not before letting Gladiator know he never regarded him as an equal and only used him. Classic Marauder. Unfortunately, Masked Marauder's big plan comes tumbling down as Gladiator is almost killed by a lion, but is quickly saved by Daredevil. Gladiator, being the honorable fighter he is, shows respect for Daredevil and walks away from the fight, leaving the Magi laughing at Masked Marauder in the end and leaving him furious. This is probably the most absurd part of Masked Marauder's journey so far, though that is debatable. I like how we get to see the Marauder's desire to use people for his own purposes, showing great influence. But not only that, we see that he's not just another foolhardy, power-crazy conqueror, as he actually has some smarts in him when he connects Daredevil to Nelson and Murdoch. Obviously, creating an entire android and teleportation rays is also pretty intelligent, but like, you know, every other supervillain has super technology in their arsenal. Just look at Paste Pot Pete, for Christ's sake. After some time being stranded, again, from Masked Marauder's levitation ray, Daredevil eventually returns via plane to Foggy and Karen and has to explain the whole fiasco in the boxing match with the Tri-Android. And the only way to do all that is to reveal that he has a twin brother. Totally real, definitely not something he just made up on the spot. Yes, it's as absurd as it sounds, but I swear there isn't enough time in the day to go over the absurdity of Matt going through an identity crisis over a twin brother that doesn't exist. Instead, we'll just move on to issue number 26, where the cover page tells us we finally get the identity of Masked Marauder revealed. This time, Matt, or Mike as he likes to be called now, and Foggy go to the court to represent their client, the Leapfrog, and run into the building manager once again. Ain't that a coincidence? Who also seems to be heading out at the moment, but can't help but disapprove of their current clientele. Very suspicious. Moving on from that totally not suspicious scene, we head to probably the most ridiculous sequence of events. And yes, I'm saying this after the Metal Bird and twin brother bits. So in the court where Leapfrog, the criminal known for jumping really high with spring boots, is being tried for his crimes of theft and so on, he is shown the boots used in said crimes to verify if he was really the one who used them. And for some reason, the only way it seems to prove he fits those boots is to make him wear them. The springs are still on them, they're fully intact. To everyone's surprise, almost immediately after getting the boots, Leapfrog jumps out the window only to realize the fasteners for the boots were removed. Oh, so I guess that's some precautions taken then, right? And then he falls 3 stories onto the street below and ends up breaking his leg. But it doesn't stop there, because then Stiltman, of all people, shows up and actually was looking to team up with this. This of course leads to Daredevil having to come in and fight him in the middle of the street. While this is going on, we actually cut to the Masked Marauder in his vacuum truck again, gotta give it up for the vacuum truck, letting himself into the office of Nelson and Murdoch, now sure of the connection they have with Daredevil. Marauder calls it quits and takes off his helmet to reveal Frank Farnham, the building manager. But you gotta admit, the funniest part about all this is that Daredevil has certainly become a very relatable superhero for this. Because if there's one thing New Yorkers can relate to, it's that their landlord is their worst enemy. Genius writing right here. Come on. I really gotta say, this is like the funniest and greatest development in the whole series so far. Like, okay, Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime, is a formidable foe through all his connections and stuff, and yeah, okay, Bullseye is pretty great too, but Marauder, the guy who owns their office, has been so far the most recurring foe in the series and the biggest pain in Daredevil's side since he showed up. I don't know about you, but that got me. Like, I was reading these one after the other. It was a ride. It was a crazy roller coaster of emotions right there. Anyways, knowing this, we return to Stiltman and Daredevil duking it out, and Stiltman, of course, loses, only for Masked Marauder to show up and save him, and then put him in his trunk before Daredevil can tell what happened. I guess this car is somehow radar sense proof. And as a funny way to end the issue, Daredevil accidentally calls out to Farnham by name, confirming to him that he actually knows him personally, setting up the climactic conclusion in the next issue, the honest-to-gosh end of the Marauder. Or is it? So with Daredevil in the dust, Masked Marauder and Stiltman retreat to yet another secret hideout of Masked Marauders, where he shows off his helicopter, which he's very proud of. And with good reason, as Masked Marauder has somehow empowered this helicopter with a force field that can disintegrate matter in seconds. Just where he finds time to create this stuff, I have no idea. The two men quickly become besties after Stiltman shows off how fast he can erect himself. How fast he can get up. His legs extend very quickly. Anyways, the two form an alliance to take down Daredevil at last. Wasting almost no time, Stiltman crashes through the window of Nelson and Murdoch's law office to kidnap all three of its members, incapacitating them with gas. With near flawless execution, Masked Marauder and Stiltman haul off with their victims in the helicopter, although unfortunately underestimating Matt once again because of his blindness. As the three wake up, Marauder plans to keep them hostage until Daredevil shows up, or until he learns of his identity. Though it would seem he doesn't have to wait long, as Matt is happy to reveal Daredevil is Mike Murdoch. You know, that old twin brother situation we were talking about earlier, much to Karen's chagrin. So Marauder sends Stiltman to find Daredevil and bring him back, but unfortunately, runs into a very peeved off Spider-Man, which does not go well for him. Let's get back to the main event though, as the Marauder decides now is the time to start executing his hostages, starting with Matt, of course, to repay him for his generosity. In the chaos, Matt throws the switch to turn off the force field before being thrown out the door, and then latching onto the bar below the copter, changing into Daredevil, then leaping right back into the helicopter. See, this is the kind of zany stuff Daredevil needs more of. As Daredevil starts to beat down on Masked Marauder, the controls are thrown out of order, and everything goes crazy. So Masked Marauder just starts flipping out.
No, I've planned, I've waited, I've schemed too long to accept another failure. No matter what happens, no matter how many others die with you, you must be destroyed.
He is in a completely desperate state to destroy the enemy who has ruined all of his perfect plans, not even caring anymore that his identity has been revealed. This is it. The last play. But as Daredevil gets one last hit in, Farnham loses his balance and falls into the same force field he meant for Daredevil, marking the end of the menace of Masked Marauder, or so it would seem. This arc right here cemented the Marauder as one of my all-time favorite classic Daredevil villains. For as timeless as some of them may be, like the Owl, Stiltman, Gladiator, none of them reached the same level of menace as the Marauder did this early on. Since the start, he demonstrated a mastery in deception with plans on top of plans, all thought out to the most minute detail. On top of this, he possessed the perfect cover, living in the very same building the crew worked in, using it to his full advantage to spot the connection between Daredevil and the Law team. So if it's alright by you, I would consider Masked Marauder to be one of the first villains to find out about Daredevil's secret identity, if you ignore the fact that Matt was pretending to have a twin brother. Just let him have this, okay? This may sound extreme to you, but after reading issues like the Yellow Suit era with enemies like the Masked Matador or Mr. Fear, the first one, not the second one, or Carnival Plunder for Pete's sake, this guy was genuinely a step up from the rest. I dare to say that Masked Marauder walked so Kingpin could run, and I will die on that hill. Dang it. Imagine my delight in finding out that Masked Marauder would reappear in Iron Man of all places, where we find him back to his old ways, stealing technology for his nefarious and still ambiguous purposes, this time from Stark Industries. Now working with some new men and a new suit, he now has a new plan that has taken years to come to fruition. We learn that when last we left him, Masked Marauder actually tricked everyone into thinking that his force field was a disintegration ray, but was actually a teleportation device, so he could start anew. So I guess he was just like messing with Stiltman then? Maybe it was like intimidation or something? And I'm just headcanoning right now. Masked Marauder also displays a new talent for making armor for his henchmen to take on Iron Man, at least for a while. But not just that, he even makes his own suit. he's designed to absorb attacks. With these upgrades, Marauder actually bests Iron Man. Now that he has him in his clutches, he, like any typical mustache-twirling villain, feels the need to explain his plans to Iron Man in one long soliloquy, and even mentions his beef with Daredevil a few times. As it turns out, the missile he stole from Stark Industries is not just being held for ransom anymore, but he's loaded it with materials to fashion an atomic bomb to hold Detroit ransom, really stepping up his game here. Iron Man eventually escapes, of course, but is once again hit by the Optiblast. The battle is tense for a while, but Iron Man actually finds a way to counteract the blindness by deducing the cause is some sort of paralysis to the nerves, and so, by using one of his wires in his suit, reactivates the nerves, restoring his sight. Needless to say, do not try this at home. And so Iron Man overcomes Marauder at last, putting him behind bars. The next place we find Marauder is in the Werewolf by Night comics, of all places, where he and his 3 henchmen, who actually have names now, Creech, Party, and Strength? I don't know who the heck named these guys, but these are definitely the henchmen names of all time. He explains to them that he spent 2 years in prison planning and scheming once again. So with this, and the fact that he calls them by their names, makes me think they kinda grew some kind of bond together. It's kinda cute, you know? For now though, they keep it simple by sticking to the simple art of bank robbing, when they are suddenly intercepted by the werewolf and Iron Man at the same time. While that may look bad for the Marauder, the 2 heroes actually literally bump into each other on the way down and start to fight each other.
I don't believe it. The idiots are gonna fight amongst themselves. This is too good to be true.
So the gang takes full advantage of the situation and, after getting what they came for, blind the heroes and lift off into the Marauder's copter. Good to see it's still around. When we return to Marauder, he explains that after his years in prison, he is ready to try his Tri-Android once again, after his ignominious defeat by Daredevil, only this time using animals instead of common crooks to power the thing, using the strength of a gorilla, the speed of a cheetah, and the savagery of an alligator, just for some extra sauce, and dubs it the Tri-Animan. We learn that this is all in an effort to get back at the Magia, presumably for his embarrassing debut of his last Tri-Man. In typical superhero fashion, Iron Man and the werewolf discover they are actually on the same side and decide to team up to stop the masked Marauder. When they finally catch up to him, it's just in time to see the Tri-Animan come to life. And what an ugly life it is. Jesus, look at this thing. The Beast is able to overpower the 2 heroes, but in an interesting turn, Masked Marauder actually kind of slips up and turns the Beast to full power, not realizing the control module was broken in the scuffle. He loses control of the Beast as well as the animals that he had detained, much to the discomfort of his henchmen who now have to deal with them. With everything spiraling, Marauder retreats to his helicopter in hopes to control the Beast again. But in the battle against the Beast, Marauder is clipped by a stray blast from Iron Man, knocking him into the sea. Thankfully, he's saved by the werewolf and taken into police custody, leaving his Tri-Animan and the money at the bottom of the river. After spending some more time in prison, he then appears in Spectacular Spider-Man number 25 through 28, where he is now the head of the Magia. A complete 180 considering he literally hated the Magia in his last appearance, and from what I can tell, he had no other appearances in between, so I do not know what changed. And neither do the writers, it seems, because there is absolutely no explanation for how this happened. Where is the Sir Superhero video on this? All the leaders of the Magia, can we get him on this? I need to know where Masked Marauder fits in all this, please. As a Masked Marauder fan, the one and only. Anyways, with this new direction for the Marauder, there must be a new gimmick for him to use. This time we are introduced to the Bird Droid, a much smaller and precise robot, and yes, your ears do not deceive you, as this time there is no Tri in the name. I mean, I guess it's a lot more convenient when you don't have to kidnap 3 separate entities to power your robot. But we are back to robbing banks again, as Masked Marauder uses his men and his bird droid to sneak into and then break into a vault, only to be intercepted by Spider-Man, just like the good old days, am I right? While Spider-Man easily takes on the men, the bird droid proves to be more tricky, and gets even more tricky when the bird droid turns into a man droid. Wait a minute, that's no ordinary man droid. That's the Tri-Man! We've been duped! Sorry, I'm gonna have to take some time to recover here, but the Tri-Man quickly strikes Spider-Man, leaving him off balance, but more importantly, leaves him open to an attack by the Masked Marauder, who blasts him with his infamous Opti Blast one more time with feeling, come on, and you know what that means, Spider-Man goes blind. But as the Marauder explains, he has actually used the time between his appearances to improve his Opti Blast, so the effects are not just temporary anymore, they are permanent. Spider-Man is left completely and utterly blind and severely disadvantaged against the Tri-Man, and just for good measure, he even sprains his ankle. Just throw that in there as well. Fortunately, Masked Marauder and his crew take off before the police arrive and make off with all the money, leaving Spider-Man in a sorry state. Naturally, Masked Marauder has to leave in style, and the bird droid / Tri-Man fends off the police. And they escape with another helicopter, of course, although this time, it has a tube, just like the truck. It's good to see some consistency from this guy. As Spider-Man is hunted by the police, because of course he would get framed after trying to stop the actual robbers, who else should come to his aid but our main man, Daredevil. After Daredevil has to save Spider-Man from falling to his death, he quickly comes to the revelation that he is, in fact, blind. We spend some time watching Spider-Man fall apart, mourning the loss of his sight as Daredevil tries to console him, and decides to seek help from Dr. Orlok, an an eye doctor.
Ophthalmologist.
Who might find a cure for Spider-Man. As it turns out, likely due to Spider-Man's healing factor, he has a good chance of recovering from the blast, provided he gets some rest. But there's no time for rest here. We have a Marauder to catch. It seems Spider-Man is feeling very determined to prove himself after all the defeat and refuses to give up. Daredevil again has to do some more consoling, but that's besides the point. Even while blind, Spider-Man climbs to the roof to access the tracker he planted on Masked Marauder with Daredevil, and I think we see a real bonding moment between these two as they trek the city of New York together to get to the Masked Marauder, but their relationship is a talk for another day. Anyways, when we return to the Marauder broadcasting to the mayor of New York City, making his case to hold the city hostage using his Tri-Man, who now holds within him the power of a nuke, by the way, so he's no longer a Tri-Man or a bird droid, but a bomb droid. All this unless the mayor relinquishes complete control of New York City to the Magi. But before anything is decided, almost on cue, Daredevil comes crashing through the window to interrupt his broadcast. And Masked Marauder is not messing around this time because he is happy to bomb the city with Daredevil in it. So without wasting any time, Masked Marauder sends the bomb droid off to blow, not knowing Spider-Man is on his way to intercept it, leaving him and Daredevil to fight in their long-awaited rematch. Oh, and in case you were wondering, Masked Marauder does have an escape route planned, so, don't worry guys, he'll make it. Daredevil, being as swift as ever, gets the men to shoot out the lights, giving him the advantage once more, but this time, Masked Marauder has fitted his mask with infrared lenses to see in the dark. And now with his Opti Blast, not only does it blind people, but it hurts them physically too. So we know Daredevil won't get blinded by it, but now it packs a punch. This time, Daredevil decides to go along with the bit this time, pretending to be blind, though this doesn't stop Masked Marauder from duking it out with Daredevil full on, because this guy just hates Daredevil that much. I mean, the guy is relentless. So relentless, in fact, he decides there and then to blow the bomb just to spite Daredevil, showing how far gone Farnham has become. After all,
What's humanity ever done for me?
Luckily, Spider-Man is able to nullify the bomb droid in time, and Farnham is left dumbfounded at yet another failure. And with that, Daredevil gets the last hit on one of his worst enemies. And there you have it. I would consider that Masked Marauder's major narrative wrapped right up. One last bout with both Spider-Man and Daredevil feels like a meaningful end to his story, just as it started, right? In his last moments, we see how Masked Marauder's mentality began to diminish over time as he became more and more desperate for conquest. Going out with his try any bird droid man, his only true companion. He even returns to the Magi to enlist their power for total control over New York City, and once again actually comes close to achieving it. Heck, he even debilitates Spider-Man for a while. There are two other minor appearances of Marauder that I'm aware of, though how canonical they are is kinda debatable to me. Punisher War Journal, Small Wake for a Tall Man. This tale takes a more comedic tone as we attend the funeral for the stilt man being held at the bar with no name. Best of all, we find our man Masked Marauder at the center of it all, and he's even doing the narration this time. that's a win to me. I find it funny that the Marauder takes a more charismatic role this time, having good rapport with everyone, but kind of gets into his old ways when he's trying to rally everyone together to take over the world and all that business, which is actually a funny way to reference all of those random team-ups he had. I think it's a good way to incorporate him in a fun, comedic story, where at the end the Punisher reveals himself to have been there the whole time and blows up the building, leaving the Masked Marauder to reflect on the morbid situation before it all goes up. It's a good read, though if you want my opinion, I think he survived with another one of those teleporting lampposts he may have left lying around, but that's just me. His last appearance that I can find is in the Joe Fixit miniseries. You know, the one with the Spider-Man meme? Yeah, that one. Where he's basically a henchman working for Count Nefaria, who's head of the Magia now. I'm not exactly sure when this takes place, but somehow he's not the head of the Magia anymore, so I guess he was demoted? Clearly it takes place after the last time he faced Spider-Man, since they do make reference to the time Spider-Man went blind. This time, however, Spider-Man knows to close his eyes thanks to Daredevil, and one-taps Masked Marauder to defeat him. And yeah, that's it. That's the last appearance of Masked Marauder. Masked Marauder's story is kind of funny. He goes from being a serious threat on the table for Daredevil, getting to be the head of the Magia, one of the biggest crime organizations in New York, then losing that position, then turning on the Magia, then being the head again, then losing it all over again, and then working for the Magia as a henchman. I enjoy how his last two appearances gave him more camaraderie with his fellow villains, though he will jump at the chance to seize power or boast. All that said, he may just be a joke villain to contemporary writers, but I really enjoyed the weight he possessed in his first few arcs as a legitimate nemesis to Daredevil. The comics themselves say that at the time he was the villain closest to discovering Matt's identity, and let's be honest, if it wasn't for that Mike Murdock identity crisis thing, he definitely would have. So although the era he was introduced to us in was fantastical and sometimes absurd, I think Masked Marauder still has the potential to be a great villain, and used in really interesting ways. I would like to see him return, but maybe that's just me. Which leads us to the conclusion. I can fix him. While I think Masked Marauder is a very entertaining villain, he still lacks the depth or history that modern Daredevil villains have to cement themselves. No backstory, no origin, not even like a tragic one. His abilities are also not exactly defined. Sometimes he has armor that can absorb physical force, sometimes he has teleporting lampposts, sometimes he has a Tri-Man or Tri-Ani-Man or Bomb Droid. So I wanted to find these abilities and expand on them. Here is how I would fix the Marauder and improve him to be an actual threat. Let's start with backstory. As a kid, Frank Farnham grew up as one of two sons. The other son is Barry, by the way, first seen in Daredevil number 192. Their father, let's call him Richard Farnham, was a very strict man, not only as a father, but as a superintendent, and put lots of pressure on Frank Farnham to excel in his studies. He would test his intellect by having him watch the cameras at work for hours, where he would have to report to his dad all the goings-on in the building, or have him run the mechanics, fix toilets, boilers, old pipes, or fixing the computers or fuse box, thus making him very adept with technology. When Frank's work wasn't satisfactory, his father would punish him, locking him in a dark room where he was totally blind. He loathed these moments, as he was deathly afraid of the dark, and started to resent his father for it. His brother Barry was always jealous of all the attention he got from their father, and drifted away from his brother, leaving him in solitude. Frank became lonely, stuck in a camera room or in the dark. With no support or affection, Frank would take out his frustrations by thieving from the residents by using all the resources he had at his disposal in the building. He would blind the cameras, and if anyone got too close, he would blind them as well, using his, as he would call it, opti-blast. After some more abuse from his father, Frank makes an anonymous call to the police accusing his father of stealing from his residents, and pointing them to the direction of a case where he planted all of the stolen belongings, sending his dad to prison for several years. Frank would then take over as the resident manager, and would go on to manage several buildings as he got older, including one particular office space occupied by our favorite lawyers, all the while maintaining his thievery and robberies of his residents. So abilities. For Masked Marauder's helmet, he has the iconic Opti-Blast that temporarily blinds people, or if the situation calls for it, can permanently blind people. This blast is also capable of inflicting actual pain with enough intensity, though this does drain the battery. The helmet has two other options. It can use night vision / infrared lenses, and as a bonus can act as like binoculars as well. You know, make the most of these goggles, right? Masked Marauder may not be the most physically impending foe, but he possesses a brilliant mind of not only a great inventor, but a great strategist, who creates plans as straightforward as robbery with the use of fantastic tools, to slow burn, multi-stage, overarching plot sort of schemes. To accommodate his lack of physical threat, he develops a full suit to go with his helmet. While it doesn't absorb any force or anything, it comes equipped with many hidden weapons and devices for hacking or tampering. So this is where I really want to give some meat on the bones of this character as we get into his goals. With all this great potential, we should probably talk about what motivates the Masked Marauder to do all this cool stuff, because the goals of a character are just as important as anything else. To put it simply, Masked Marauder wants control. Very original, I know, but this is more of like an obsession than a power fantasy. He wants to take over New York City, of course, but his need to time his plans to the second and monitor each element he is facing comes from his controlling father. After plotting his scheme against his father, Farnham now has to prove that he can control more, and do it better than his father ever could. This is also what I think makes him a great parallel for Daredevil, because Daredevil, well, he's a daredevil, he's a risk taker. He takes risks, he's unpredictable, he acts on emotions. To Farnham, he's an animal that needs to be controlled, and every time he faces him, it's a challenge to that mentality, to his control. I would love to see an interpretation like this applied to Masked Marauder and maybe use it as a way to reintroduce the character in a darker or more realistic context. I really enjoy seeing the potential in obscure characters like this, and I hope you enjoyed my reimagining. Hey, maybe it might inspire something so Daredevil isn't always stuck fighting the Kingpin all the time, and maybe give an old Daredevil rogue some new life. Let me know what you think. Do you think Masked Marauder has potential? How would you rewrite him? Are there any Daredevil rogues you think need a revival or reboot or whatever this is? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about this obscure villain who I love how goofy he is, I love how crazy he is, but I love how dramatic he is. It was entertaining, and I thought it was really fun for me, and I hope I do more obscure Daredevil villains like this in the future. I love reimagining things, or hand-cannoning things, or hand-cannoning? Head-cannoning. Yeah, I like imagining these things, especially when it comes to the obscure. Like, give him his second chance, you know? I find it fun. So maybe I'll do more in the future if this takes off, you know? There are plenty of Daredevil rogues I'd love to do. Plenty of obscure ones for sure. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.